From KPFK in Los Angeles, California, Valley Free Radio in Florence, Massachusetts, WNUC in Detroit, and BikeTalk.org worldwide, this is Bike Talk.
Bike Talk.
Welcome to Bike Talk. I'm Taylor Nichols.
And I'm Nick Richard.
Hey, Nick.
Hey, Taylor.
You know, sometimes when I'm riding my bike around town, I notice that I almost never have to come to a complete stop. I mean, it's really, for me, one of the joys of riding my bike. Never stopping, never having to put my foot down. But on those occasional times when I do have to come to a complete stop, I have to stop because there are so many cars at some intersection, you know? So I stop and I wait for the light to change and I watch all these cars going by and I wonder where all these people going. And then I think, you know, how many of those people that are driving their car could accomplish their task on a bike or some other, you know, mode of transport? I know not all of them by any means, but surely some of them, maybe 5, 10, 15%. You think what?
They've actually quantified that. About half of all car trips in the United States are under 3 miles and over a quarter under 1 mile. These are bikeable trips.
Totally. I mean, granted, okay, you're going to the hardware store, you're getting lumber, you know, you're going to drive. But short of that, I also wonder, you know, if we had first-rate bike infrastructure, could that number be even higher, 30, 40%? You know, people in other cities and states and countries can do it. How come we can't?
Well, it's a long story, right?
Yeah, I guess that's why we do the show, eh?
Yeah.
Either way, it's something to ponder. And since May is Bike Month, I just figured this was a good time to ponder it.
Yes, Bike Month. It's finally here, I think, by the time people hear this. Yes, it's here.
Right. May 3rd is Ride a Bike Day. So if you don't ride a bike as a normal course of your day, on May 3rd, Sunday, get out there and ride a bike.
Yeah, is that for people who don't usually bike?
I think it's for everybody, but I think it's aimed at people who don't normally hop on a bike, yeah.
And then they have Bike Week within Bike Month, or is it Ride to Work Week?
Well, it's Ride to Work Week is what, the 11th through the 17th, something like that. But it got me thinking that we should have Bike to the Store Day and a Bike to Coffee Day and a Bike to School Day. And, you know, how about a Bike to the Bar night? You know, the list just goes on.
Well, they have those things within Bike Month too, you know. I don't know about Bike to the Store Day, but there's all kinds of stuff. There's coffee, there's bars, there's bike buses to school.
Well, you're the one that's always saying, how come people drive a car to the bar? That's like asking for trouble.
Well, why are there parking spaces at bars?
Right, because people drive their car there.
Yeah.
But if you have an idea for a Bike to fill in the blank day, let us know, and we'll read it on the air these next couple of weeks.
All right, what else is going on?
Well, we got some good news. America's bike lane is not going to be taken away. It will continue to be America's bike lane. And a lot of that has to do with the efforts of our guest, Kallie Krumpos. And she's with WADA, the Washington Area Bicycle Association. Kallie, welcome back to Bike Talk.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here and happy to be celebrating.
Yes, we are too. Tell us a little bit about what happened and what went on and where we are now, and go.
You all have heard a little bit about how we got here, heard rumors starting early this year about federal efforts to remove a protected bike lane in DC in February. That became real in March, and we jumped into action to bring a legal case to stop the federal government from removing those protected bike lanes on federal lands. We got in front of a judge on April 9th requesting a summary judgment. We needed a quick decision to make sure that the federal government did not move forward with removing those bike lanes. We were in front of the judge. She promised that she would have her ruling out before the deadline that we'd been given by the federal government, April 23rd.
Wow.
So we knew that was the deadline. Something was going to happen by April 23rd, or they'd start ripping up the bike lanes.
Right.
Afternoon of April 21st, the ruling came out. She ruled in our favor. We won. Kind of serendipitously, we had been planning a national day of action in partnership with the League of American Bicyclists. WABA had been planning to host a rally again on the National Mall, and the League helped organize folks across the country. We saw rallies across the coasts, across the Midwest. We had folks in Hawaii, people really rising up, talking about why it is so important, the infrastructure locally and America's Bike Lane, the 15th Street Bike Lane. It was amazing time that we got to turn what was going to be another protest ride into a celebration.
I wonder if you could sort of explain why, you are calling it and we are calling it America's Bike Lane.
It is really symbolic. The 15th Street protected bike lane is one of the key connections across the DMV, connecting DC and Virginia in particular. It's one of the lowest stress routes for folks that need to get from Northern Virginia to DC, and that bike lane continues up for a couple miles through the heart of downtown DC and up into residential Northwest DC, which is a connection for the first protected bike lane in DC. Wow. It sees more than 4,000 people that use it every day, and it is the model of what we know that protected bike lanes can do. It makes it safer for people who ride bikes, safer for people who walk, safer for people who drive, even sped up car traffic. So this is the type of project that we know has the type of impact that is really beneficial for all road users.
Right. It's just so counterintuitive that putting in a bike lane speeds up traffic. And that's why I think we have such a hard time making our case to people who just don't understand these things.
Sometimes you hear from drivers that they get anxious about biking right next to a cyclist. They don't understand. Maybe they feel uncomfortable getting too close. And that's great. We don't want people to get too close. But when there are separated spaces, everyone knows what to expect.
Right.
We have the ability for people to use their own spaces. Traffic is predictable. And I think for a lot of these corridors, we know that an extra lane doesn't fix the traffic problem.
Absolutely, right.
You are not fixing the traffic issues with congestion by adding that extra lane.
Yeah, lots of times an extra lane just increases the sort of bad driving of drivers. They have an extra lane to speed or to pass or something like that. You had also mentioned that this bike lane goes past a lot of national monuments.
That is exactly right. So the bike lane in question, parts of it are on DC land. The part in question is actually on federal land. So this is a case where the federal government could, they have jurisdiction, that is their land, decide to remove it. The issue in this case is that they didn't follow the processes. But the bike lane connects from the tidal basin right at the footsteps of the Jefferson Memorial.
Right.
Passes by folks who know Haynes Point, East Potomac Park, along the Washington Monument, and then connects past the White House. So several of these key destinations that, yes, people who are residents, commuters are using every day, but also millions of tourists who want to come and enjoy the National Mall and DC and the region.
Right. Well, this is something we talk about a lot, that there is so much community outreach to put in a bike lane. And then what the government did here was they forwent. Is that the word? They forwent any of these processes in deciding to take out the lane. And that's the case that you won. So this means that the government still could take the bike lane out if they went through all the proper channels.
Exactly, to your point. The case we brought was about procedure.
Right.
So a little bit dry. We're saying the government did not follow their own procedures, the Administrative Procedure Act, that would require a thorough review of what would the impact be of removing the protected bike lane.
Right.
The finding was that the way they moved forward was arbitrary and capricious. So to your point, they forewent those necessary reviews.
It's a new word and we like it.
We saw in the text references to the executive order to make DC safe and beautiful.
Right.
That goes exactly in the opposite direction of the study of the protected bike lane that found it made it safer. It kept it easy for people to get around. We saw more users in that place. To your point, the process has to be followed. It cannot be arbitrary and capricious. They have to do the full review to determine what the impact would be.
Well, I forgot who it was who said, when we fight, we win, whether that was Michelle Obama or who, I don't know. But that holds true here today for us. And thanks for all the work that WABA has done, the Washington Area Bicyclists Association, and the League of American Cyclists. It really shows us how important it is to support these kinds of organizations, because they're the ones that write the letters, hire the lawyers, go to court, and get these kind of things overturned. Because It's a step in the right direction to have a protected bike lane through Washington, D.C., and I'm so glad it's still there. I hope I get to ride on it one day.
Come out anytime. We know that the fight is by no means over. The same week that we received a victory in court, we heard guidance come down from the U.S. Department of Transportation calling on governors and mayors to rip out roadways that had been dedicated away from vehicles. Right. So we are continuing to work with our partners, to work with the League of American Bicyclists, with our national and federal partners, local groups, to think about how can we continue to protect these vital spaces, protected bike lanes, trails, sidewalks, these crucial spaces for people to get around.
Well, the fight goes on. Kallie Krumpos of WABA, thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you.
So we were just talking about how important bike organizations are. And of course, most states have one. In California, CalBike is run by Kendra Ramsey, who's a friend of the show and been on many times. Kendra, you guys just did your statewide bike summit, correct?
We did last week.
I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about who was there and what went on and what you accomplished.
Thanks for having me. So we actually started out the bike summit with something we haven't done in a while, which is a lobby day. So we had about 65 folks come to Sacramento a day early and join us for 61 meetings with legislators, with their own legislators throughout the state. And we focused on two issues this year. One was e-bike bills. So right. Both supporting CalBike and our partners at Streets Are for Everyone, Streets for All, and People for Bikes in our SB 1167, which is supporting basically consumer protections for legal e-bikes and pushing the faster e-motos into sort of the moped category and other categories to kind of make that differentiation, and also opposing the bills that are cracking down on legal e-bikes and basically making them so they wouldn't exist in California. So that was one of our avenues. The other avenues we talked about with legislators was protecting the active transportation program, which is the state's largest and only funding source for active transportation infrastructure. So biking and walking infrastructure and programming, consistently underfunded, oversubscribed, and also the first on the chopping block when the budget's tight. So we asked for an additional $200 million. We'll be talking about that more as the May budget revise comes out. And we're also asking the legislature to put back the money for e-bike incentives that was cut in this last year.
Yeah.
CalBike also has a bill. We also have a bill, AB 2168, to kind of revise how the active transportation program works, just beef up a little bit on that, focus on connections to transit. So really within how the program already works, but just kind of get a little bit more emphasis on connections to transit to really connect the whole trip for people who bike and walk, who often also use transit. So just highlighting that. So that was, I'll say it's day zero for the summit.
That's a good start. Yeah.
Yeah. Super successful. Really great to have a lot of folks come out for that. And then we had about 275 people come out for the 2 days of the summit. So we have a combination of advocates from around the state. We had folks come from as far north as Humboldt County and as far south as Joshua Tree. So we have a lot of advocates come, both from organized groups and folks that are independent and doing this kind of on their own and organizing their own, sort of local independent advocacy. We also have local agency staff who are fighting the good fight from inside a government agency and really come to learn and share what they're doing and what success they're finding. Which is really excellent and helps other agencies learn. We have consultants that are getting hired to do the work with those agencies. We had some researchers from different universities that are, doing evaluations and, pushing the kind of the field forward. We had
and creating data, no?
Right. We had, notably we had Dr. Asha Weinstein Agrawal and her collaborator, Dr. Kevin Fang, who worked on the Mineta Transportation Institute report on e-bike safety. So they presented
We've
on that.
had them on Bike Talk, by the way.
Yeah, of course. Excellent report. Really underpins a lot of what we've been talking about legal e-bikes and the other devices that are, maybe not so legal, and some other researchers as well. And then we had a lot of really interesting sessions. We had a group of parents and their kids come from South Pasadena to talk about their bike buses at their schools. And, I unfortunately walked into the room after the kids spoke, I heard it was fantastic, but what I heard from the parents was they asked the question, how do you design a street? How do you design a city for 8-year-olds? And the answer that they gave was you design it so that kids can learn and they can make mistakes, and those mistakes don't cost them their life, right?
Wow.
And they can learn those skills and become independent and become well-rounded adults in a way that, helps them build skills kind of from day one when they're able to get out there on their bike and kind of learn how to navigate with their parents and with their friends, but build those skills to do it on their own.
Right.
And it's really, it was really beautiful to kind of hear about the movement they're building in their community.
And they gain agency, they gain confidence. It's really wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah. We had different communities come in to talk about mobility justice. We had 5 current office holders, 5 current city elected officials at the Bike Summit.
Well, Bike Talk was at the summit last year, and we missed it this year, but we will plan to be there next year.
It is usually every 2 years.
Or every 2 years. Okay.
So look for us in 2028.
Well, Kendra Ramsey, thank you so much for everything that CalBike does and for coming on and giving us an update of the CalBike Summit.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. It really is a never-ending battle, Yeah. I guess Bike Month is kind of a celebration of all of our wins. River Ride in Los Angeles is back. It's on May 3rd, and that's thanks to Damian Kevitt and his organization, SAFE, Streets Are For Everyone. And also, May 14th, Cynthia Rose and the Santa Monica Spoke is having a handlebar happy hour at Santa Monica Brew Works, so that'll be a lot of fun.
We're on the air in a lot of places, so people are maybe thinking that's fine for LA, but what's near me? Just search. There's something near you. Like near me in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, they have a bike to work day with a bike breakfast. In Northampton, they also have a bike breakfast in the middle of Bike to Work week. The bike breakfasts really appeal to me.
Yeah, I like that one.
Coffee with a bunch of people, just excited to be there. You find out who's your fellow travelers. Other things in Northampton for Bike Month and Bike Week. May 9th is the Great Tree Ride, where they ride around and they look at the coolest trees in Northampton.
That's a great idea.
There's a leisurely intergenerational ride. They meet at the senior center.
That makes me think of that interview we did a while ago with Biking Without Age, getting some people that can't really ride bikes, getting them in cargo bikes and getting out and about and seeing some of the trees and some of the environment around.
And then there's a cargo bike meetup if you're just into cargo bikes, but without the old people. Just empty cargo bikes.
That's funny.
Or with kids in them. They have these everywhere, these Bike Week events.
Yeah.
Our friend Rio in Detroit sent their Bike Month event, which is the May 3rd season opener of, I think it's
the slow roll, right?
I'm not sure if it's slow roll. It's Pushing Pedals Sunday rides, which they do anyway. It's on the Joe Louis Greenway, supporting Black-owned restaurants. So that's fun.
Yeah, we haven't heard from Rio in a while. That's really great. I'm glad they're doing that and starting that again this year. Well, I'm still planning my trip starting in the middle of May of Bike Month. So it was really nice to have Abe from Calfee on last week with some ideas about some lights.
People are excited.
Good.
About your ride.
Good. I'm nervous about it. I was talking to Jim Shanman at Ciclavia, which is an open street event here in Los Angeles. And of course they have them everywhere. I said, Jim, I'm kind of nervous. And Jim said, man, I'd be scared shitless. And I thought that was kind of funny because I am sometimes. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night thinking, God, can I do this? And how's it going to go? And how am I going to handle it? So,
well, we're all going to be watching you. Hopefully we'll get your Strava link up on our website, biketalk.org. And we're going to ask Kendra, she's going to put the word out. Maybe some people will join you in California and other places.
And we'll talk about it as I'm on the ride on the show. I'm really looking forward to meeting people both in the north coast of California and then in Oregon and Montana and Idaho and North Dakota. And, getting some of those stories and see what they think about me riding home to my 101-year-old dad and all of that stuff. So I'm excited to get started and to see where it goes,
It's going to be good. It's a big undertaking.
Did I bite off more than I can chew is the question.
Tune in and find out.
Yeah.
Oh, bike.
I think it's time for Stacey's news. Hey?
Oh, yeah. Oh, you're saying Stacey's news now.
I'm Stacey with this week's news. From Streets Blog USA, Omaha, Nebraska may be the largest city in the United States to make its all-electric bike share system free. Everyone over 16 living within its service area will now get unlimited 60-minute rides. Omaha's bike share operator Heartland announced its launch of the free rides this month. Fun fact, their CEO, Benny Foltz, was in Bike Talk episode 2511 from March of last year. May is National Bike Month, established in 1956 by the League of American Wheelmen, now known as the League of American Bicyclists. The month-long celebration of bikes promotes biking for fun, fitness, and transportation. Bike to Work Week is May 11th to 17th, and Bike to Work Day on Friday the 15th. And there are all kinds of bike rodeos, bike breakfasts, and themed social rides. Wherever you live, there's bound to be an event near you. And if not, make your own, and remember to send pictures to biketalk.org. CBS News in Sacramento reports that a group of cycling advocates and UC Davis students is pushing for safety improvements at the university's West Campus following the death of Lincoln Sabini, a 20-year-old UC Davis student last week. Lincoln was killed by a car driver while biking to work along Hutchinson Drive, where speeding cars are common and bikers are protected only by a thin white line on a narrow shoulder. He is the second student in the past 4 years to be killed at that location while biking. U.S. DOT Secretary Sean Duffy celebrated Earth Day by announcing the Freedom to Drive initiative, which directs governors and mayors across the country to identify strategies to alleviate their worst congestion nightmares, choking your economy. Duffy advised leaders to focus solutions on expanding and maximizing roadway capacity for driving. This is another way of clawing back the limited federal resources allocated to transit, biking, and walking projects to focus on driving, and adds insult onto the injury of the removal of the CAF standards for fuel efficiency in 2025's One Big Beautiful Bill Act. A recent article in the typically progressive publication, The Guardian, is titled, "As E-Bike Crashes Sent an Increasing Number of People to the Hospital, Cities Search for Solutions," while picturing an e-moto on the cover. It echoes the Dangers of Bikes article that appeared in the New York Times last year. Meanwhile, the Massachusetts Bike Coalition reports faster e-bikes, e-motos, and other micromobility devices are in a legal gray area in Massachusetts. Some municipalities are being encouraged to set their own policies, which could lead to a fragmented regulatory system that changes when riders get to a town line. E-moto, e-bike confusion is real, and e-bike lash is coming to your municipality.
Thanks, Stacey, for Stacey's news. One thing I wanted to add was I saw in the New York Times, truckers are killing more than 5,000 people a year on our roads, and the regulators are at fault, that there is this whole lack of regulation in the trucking business, and some unqualified truckers are on the road because of loopholes in the system, and they're killing 5,000 Americans every year. And I just love the fact that he put truckers are killing more than 5,000 people a year.
Not trucks.
Exactly. Yeah.
Don't think about that on your ride.
Right.
But speaking of that, one of our listeners, Kevin Grishkot, gave us a lead on this study called Car Harm, about the harms that cars do. And we got in touch with one of the authors, Patrick Miner from the University of Edinburgh. I talked to Patrick and Kevin. He's on there too.
Great.
Patrick Miner, you're a researcher at the University of Edinburgh. You did a study on car harm. I guess it's just all of the harms associated with the automobile?
Yes. First of all, thank you for having me. The car harm study is kind of about cars and car infrastructure and the ways in which they harm people and the environment. So it's about crashes, pollution, social injustice, and environmental damage. It's what in academia we call a literature review, and it's basically going through and putting together a lot of various sources on these types of harm. And so it's meant to be kind of a resource for people to find additional research that might be specifically relevant to them. One of the main findings is around the violence or kind of crashes category. I'm from the US. I'm in the UK now, but I'm originally from the US. And I think as we're all aware in the US, a lot of people are seriously injured or even killed in car crashes. One of the things that we wanted to do with this paper is put together a historical record of the people who have been killed or injured in crashes. So one of the top line findings is that Since around 1900, when cars were introduced, we estimate that they have killed approximately 60 to 80 million people and injured at least 2 billion people. Currently, that's about 1 out of every 34 deaths. So it's a very common cause of death and injury. And one of the points of this paper is to kind of communicate that societally, we haven't quite grappled with the harm caused by these events, the crashes, and also the other forms of harm.
Kevin Grishkot just joined. You brought this study on car harm by Patrick Miner to our attention. Patrick just finished saying 1 out of 34 deaths is car related.
Globally, yes. It's not a very fun paper to discuss because it is a lot of serious statistics about harm. 1 in 34 deaths are caused by cars and the car system. For example, it is the leading cause of death for children and young people. And that applies to the United States, in most parts of the United States, and globally.
Yeah.
So, it's a very serious topic, but I think it's important to remember in the way that we, and I'm using we in the kind of big sense here, have set up our cities and our societies, we've kind of built in a lot of risk to our transport system. And a lot of these crashes and injuries are, at least in part, preventable by changes to the way that we do things, by prioritizing walking, cycling, wheeling, and public transportation a little bit more than we do currently.
As we're trying to sort of change the conversation or the way people view the world, doing things like not using the word accident anymore.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because it implies there's nothing we could do. All these kids are killed, but who could have seen that coming?
Yeah, exactly. So the use of the word accident, implies that it's unavoidable. But for example, one of the things that we talk about in the paper is that the way cars have been designed thus far, at least on the crash testing, is based on a crash test dummy designed to replicate the average male anatomy. And so that increases risks for women who are in car crashes. And so one of the parts of the paper that we talk about is how the risk for women in car crashes is higher. The risk of injury and death is higher than it is for men because of that mistake or injustice of designing cars only for male anatomy.
Do they design them for kids' anatomy?
Not as extensively as they should. So there's currently a little bit of change happening around which types of crash test dummies are used and how those are designed. There are specific design and safety standards for children, but basically the variety in these crash test dummies is not sufficient to represent the variety in human bodies. And one of the kind of systematically left out categories is women. And for example, the muscle structure in the neck is different between men and women. And so even if we're just talking about accounting for height and weight and things like that, there are still differences beyond that have to be accounted for in crash test design.
That's still just in the car. That's not having to do with anybody outside the car, but also this chilling effect where people can't walk around except on these little strips of sidewalk where the most of the space is taken up by cars, even when there's no cars. There's this one cartoon showing people walking around on these little rickety wooden planks around this gaping chasm. Mm-hmm. It's supposed to represent how we all kind of walk on the edges around our cars because the space is not for us.
That illustration you mentioned is I think it's by Carl Jilg for the Swedish Road Administration. And I actually use that sometimes in my lectures because it kind of communicates this idea that every time you step into the roadway, you're making a life and death decision. So if you're walking or if you're using a wheelchair and you're going into the roadway, into the potential path of cars, you're making a life and death decision. But, you probably were just trying to go pick up an apple from the store, but you have to kind of take on this life and death decision as you're judging whether it's safe to cross the roadway. I think when I started thanking Kevin for writing in, I think it might have been right before you joined, Kevin. So I just wanted to say thanks for writing into Bike Talk and mentioning our paper. That was really nice of you. To go back to what I was talking about, kind of getting into these other categories of the paper. So the second category after this sort of violence and crashes category is pollution and health. And so in the health category, there's kind of a few main topics: pollution, sedentary travel, social isolation. So I'll just very briefly touch on those because that's quite a long section and we can circle back to anything that's of interest. But the pollution is referring to the pollution of air, land, and water systems through vehicle manufacturing, engine exhaust, road salts, abrasion of tires, brakes, and road surfaces. And this actually kills approximately 300,000 to 400,000 people per year. Some of the subsets within pollution would be noise pollution is a major one. I think a lot of people in the transport planning world or in academia are familiar with the phrase that cities are not loud, cars are loud, which I know has been frequently quoted in some kind of online forums and videos around urbanism lately, because the main source of noise pollution in urban areas is cars. So cars that are going relatively slow, the noise is coming from mostly coming from the engine, but at higher speeds, noise is dominated by tires rolling on the road surface. So for example, electric cars are quieter than internal combustion engine cars at slow speeds. But unfortunately, at faster speeds, EVs, electric vehicles, are not much quieter. And the car noise is annoying, and it does contribute to a lot of kind of negative health impacts. But it goes beyond annoying to things like hearing loss, sleep disturbance, high blood pressure, cardiovascular disease. So there can be some quite serious results from the noise pollution. Regarding the air pollution that is a result from cars and the car system, there's a few different types of air pollution, but one I'll maybe just briefly focus on that doesn't get a lot of attention in the media is car tires. When we talk about pollution from cars, we talk a lot about tailpipe emissions, but car tires themselves are actually quite a prominent source of pollution. As the tires roll on the road surface, little particles break off from the tires, and unfortunately, tires are made of mostly synthetic rubber, which is derived from petrochemicals, so it's kind of like a plastic, as well as some metal. And a lot of these materials that are used in the tires are toxic to humans and to other species. Those car tire particles are quite dangerous. And there was a study that drilled a hole in some ice in the Arctic, going back to around 1966. So the kind of bottom of this ice fern represented the year 1966. And they found plastic particles in the sample from 1966. About a quarter of those particles were from car tires. So even though there had never been cars in this place in the Arctic, the car tire particles are circulating the global environment. And one of the headline things that we say from this paper is that, while some people benefit from automobility, nearly everyone, whether or not they actually drive, is harmed by cars and the car system. I'll pause there on the ill health category, but it might be relevant to talk a little bit about sedentary travel, since that's quite relevant to cycling as well.
Yeah, I want to talk about sedentary travel. Sitting kills. At some point, I wonder if you're going to get around to climate change and wars for oil, two things which could turn our planet into a Martian desert. But let's go on and talk about sedentary travel. But Kevin, do you want to say anything now?
Let me give you a little background about me.
Yeah.
The way I found this study was I'm taking coursework in urban planning so I can better harass my elected officials for better bike infrastructure. And I came across this study on something else, and it kind of confirmed something that I've thought for a while, and that is that the personal automobile is a mistake because it allows all kinds of bad things to happen. I'm walking around these days with 2 artificial knees and 2 artificial hips from getting hit by a car 20 years ago. I've had 10 rounds of knee surgery, and they just couldn't get it right. And it's all from being hit by a car. And I've been hit by cars twice on bikes. It's really ridiculous.
I guess. Are you in a car right now, Kevin?
Yeah, I actually am.
That's the irony, right? You have to.
Well, yeah. I mean, I could ride to where I'm going, but the closest infrastructure for bikes is 7 miles from my house. And then I'm practically at my destination. It just makes no sense to me to put the bike in a car, drive it somewhere, ride the bike put the bike back in the car and drive the car home. I'm thinking that this thing with the price of gas might actually benefit us. Because if gas goes to something like $10 or $15 a gallon, there's not many people going to be able to absorb that. And it'll force the issue of bikes.
Thank you, Kevin. I'm going to throw it back to Patrick. We got about 4 minutes until my break is over. But Kevin just referenced the rising price of gas, and that's because of a war for oil, which is partly because we are car dependent, and there's just the car dependency that Kevin is bringing up, where he's hit by cars and now he has to drive a car because that's the way it's set up. But Patrick, you want to talk about sedentary travel?
Yeah, it's really unfortunate how many people have had to live with a disability or a lifelong injury because of being hit by a car, in many cases due to lack of proper infrastructure. And car-dependent landscapes require people to use cars. And if you don't use a car, you're either forced to stay in place or forced to miss out on going to work, forced to miss out on picking up the food that you need to get from the store. With the sedentary travel kind of section of the paper, we talked a bit about how sitting in a car and remaining motionless like that is not how we humans kind of used to get around before cars, which is mostly walking, but also cycling and kind of using our bodies as our form of movement. There are lots of other ways in which people are sedentary, sitting and watching a TV or something like that. So we're not saying that cars are the only reason people are sedentary. But in an example study, when study participants were asked to just make one change where they switched from car commuting to public transport commuting with no other behavior changes, they increased their energy expenditure by over 100 calories per day, which is equivalent to walking around 2 kilometers, a bit under sort of 1.5 miles around there. Basically, this idea that, we could incorporate more exercise and activity that's good for our physical and mental health in our everyday lives just by having kind of short walks between places or wheeling or cycling between places. And that little bit of energy is really excellent for our health.
Yeah. But we don't see options. We can't see alternatives.
Yeah, our status quo is car dependency. And for most of us, putting it in the context of the US for a minute again, our entire lives, the places we've lived have been car dependent. Most places in the U.S. are extremely car dependent, with a few exceptions of, I used to live in Chicago for a while, and you can definitely get around Chicago using public transportation, walking and cycling, and of course, New York and a few other places. But most places are completely car dependent. And so we have the windshield bias. Planners and elected officials and policymakers only see transportation through their windshield of being a driver or being a passenger. And we start talking about things like cycling or taking public transportation or even our own bodies, our actual bodies walking and wheeling as alternative transportation. Walking and using our own bodies for movement is really an elemental part of how humans get around. So it's not really an alternative form of transportation. It is the main form of transportation. And we just need to make some changes to enable people to be able to get around.
I don't think we got to your last category.
No, there's 2 more categories, social injustice and environmental damage. For social injustice, this is basically the idea that the harm caused by cars is unevenly distributed. So it's affecting some people more than others. And so we talked about that a little bit earlier, actually, with the design of cars for leaving out women. In terms of the last category, environmental damage, this is, an area that a lot of us are familiar with because we frequently hear about doing some type of environmentally friendly thing is equivalent to taking X number of cars off the road. But what this section of the paper talks a little bit about that is less frequently discussed is the things around tires, which I mentioned a little bit earlier. And then even things like land use. So when we have sprawling land uses where people are really spread out into kind of the suburbs, it creates a lot of environmental problems beyond just the car tailpipe emissions.
Patrick, I'd love to have you back to talk about this some more. And Kevin, thank you so much for bringing this study to our attention.
Yeah, I'm really impressed by this study because it says what I've been thinking for a long time, and that the harm of cars is a lot more than people think it is. The thing that I personally worry about is going forward, whether Bubba in his pickup truck is going to actually listen to this data or not. Because the data is out there. The data is available to everybody. And car brains being what they are, or as I like to call them, narcissists, they just don't listen. They got their Ford F-150, and that's the way it's going to be. So we have to break through that. And that's what I think is the biggest single issue, is breaking through the barrier.
Yeah, and it's not just Bubba and his F-150 either. It's a lot of moms and dads and it's all of us. I mean, we're stuck.
I think you can convince a soccer mom easier than you can a pickup truck driving dad.
I have that same prejudice.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Patrick. And we'll have you both back, I hope.
All right. See you later.
Thank you very much.
As you said, I think last episode, cars are the leading cause of death for children around the world.
It's scary to hear that as you're getting ready to go on a 4,000-mile, bike trip across the country. And another one that really bugs me is that motor vehicles are the main source of noise pollution in urban areas. And I am so aware of that.
Yeah. Thank you, Patrick Miner, for your car harm article. We'll put the link on our website, biketalk.org.
Great. And on a more upbeat note, I got in touch with one of the board members for one of the big bicycle groups here in Los Angeles, a challenged athlete coach. In Los Angeles, there are 2 or 3 real big cycling clubs, and one of them is the Grange Club, and we've had Marco Fantone on before and Jonathan Weiss, members of that club. Well, today we have a board member from the club on, Deb Carabet, and she is a para-athlete coach and trainer. Deb, welcome to Bike Talk.
Thank you, Taylor. Nice to be here.
It's really nice to have you. Oftentimes, the rap on big cycling clubs is that they're all about racing and macho feelings behind the handlebars, and they don't get involved with a lot of advocacy or things like this. Why did you get Lagrange involved in working with Challenged Athletes Foundation? I think it's such a wonderful program.
I can tell you that I was one of those people that was petrified of Lagrange and their, macho and racing, but they also are a 501(c)(3). We are a nonprofit. Right. And when I was asked to be on the board this past year, I was excited because my specialty is working with para-athletes or age groupers who want to learn how to ride a hand cycle or are visually impaired. And we've been talking about different ways that Lagrange can give back to our community. It was just a natural fit with Challenge Athletes Foundation. I am their main coach for Southern California, north of San Diego, and I've kind of been after them too. Let's do something up in the LA area. There are so many parents who want sports with kids. And as we all know, sports really brings people together. Yeah. And in cycling, we have hand cycling, they can do recumbents. And so one of our board meetings in the last couple of months, it was like, okay, how are we going to give back to the community? And it was just a natural fit with Challenge Athletes Foundation. Lagrange is really excited. Our members are excited. We had our LA development director, Morgan, come and explain what our partnership is. And then I had Morgan invite 3 athletes. One athlete, Adrian Broca, is a visually impaired, and I know him both through the running community and the triathlon. And 2 others are newer for me to meet. And Sharif was born in Egypt, cerebral palsy, walks with crutches, but he's a wild man. He plays wheelchair basketball and wheelchair football and wheelchair tennis and sled hockey. And then Raj, he had polio. And so he has been getting into more and more sports with sled hockey and wheelchair tennis. And he wants to get involved with hand cycling. That's what we were talking about. What we're going to do is I've been working on teaching some of our members how to become pilots or captains for visually impaired to ride tandems.
Great. Yeah, we've talked about that before on the show. Sonia Chapnick has been on the show, and we've had other pilots on the show. I know Sonia very well. Yeah. And it's so interesting because I think it's just such a great sport to get out and feel the wind in your hair and all that. So you're going to train people to be pilots, and then would you train them to also teach or work with para-athletes?
Once I get enough of our members that can be captains or pilots, our next step is really to try and get tandems, which even the local bike shops, like somebody call me and say, oh, we were given your name and we've got this tandem and it's 10 years old and it's in great shape. I'm like, I don't care how old it is. We'll take it. I would like to teach our members to be able to work with athletes with visual impairments. Also, maybe what we can do is take those people that either have hand cycles or I can get CAF to possibly loan us some and have everybody ride together side by side next to a hand cyclist or a recumbent bike cyclist.
That's something that you don't see very often. I think that that's a great idea to make them feel a part of the group. When you watch a marathon, you often see a hand cyclist, but they're way out in front, all on their own, and they're not in a peloton or any kind of group, or they can't draft. So I think that that's a wonderful idea.
Believe it or not, Taylor, they are allowed to draft off each other. So when you see a marathon, LA Marathon, we're inclusive. We want to have everybody. Our hand cyclists, that's exhibition because hand cyclists are really cycling, but we want them to be able to do the race. Push rims, when you see our athletes that are in the chairs with the long nose, those are considered our runners, our marathoners.
I did not know the difference.
They can podium. Our hand cyclists are purely to be for exhibition and be part of the community, but they can draft. They are allowed to. Now in triathlon, they're not allowed to. We're having more and more races that are now draft legal, and you have to be on a road bike. You cannot be on a tri bike. So,
well, you've even been threatening to bring some triathletes into the biking world. So.
I have. I am trying to build that bridge.
Very good.
So that cyclists don't hate us as much, and triathletes don't hate and aren't afraid of the cyclists. Because really, we're all one big community. And like I said, when I'm coaching on the triathlon piece, I'm coaching as a cyclist. They have to know their skills, their techniques, emergency stops, everything else. They need to know the etiquette.
You were the coach of the year for the USTA.
USAT.
USAT for triathlons. Now, is that for para triathletes or is that for all kinds of triathletes?
So they give 5 awards for coaches. I was coach of the year for community impact, which was both for my programs bringing women into our sport and teaching people how to swim in an ocean and not be afraid and get under the waves, which is so funny because 12 years ago, even though I grew up out here, I was that petrified, like, oh my God, I can't do this. And also because I'm really trying to build programs here in Los Angeles for people with disabilities to get on a hand cycle, to get on a recumbent bike or a race chair. I'm working with Rayford Johnson, who is a track Olympian, his son. They helped rebuild the track at UCLA. And I did one intro to para multisport, kids 12 to 18. And Joshua Johnson is wonderful. And he is helping me to try and get UCLA to actually let me use the track on a regular basis so we can really have like a track night or twice a month where people can learn how to use a hand cycle. They can learn how to use a race chair or a recumbent or what we call race runners, which sort of look like a bike. It has a bike seat and bike handles, but you actually push it as if you're running. You use it sort of in between a bike
balance a little bit. I gotcha.
I actually have a video where we had, I love this kid. Mateo's probably 18 now. He was 16, born with cerebral palsy, but swam on his high school swim team.
Wow.
And his mom said, he was the only one. They put him up against people with no disabilities and he held his own. But he did a race runner and he ran around the track and his mom was in tears and she said, this is the first time he has ever felt the wind in his hair. And that made me cry. And this is why I do what I do. So we want to get both communities, the non-disabled and the disabled communities together and go ride together, because especially in LA, as you know, it is not an easy place to ride a bike.
No,
and when you're on a hand cycle and you're only maybe 6 inches, it'd be nice if we've got cyclists and hand cyclists together that can enjoy each other and learn from each other. Yeah.
Well, there's no question. The more people we bring together, the better off we all are. I think the League of American Cyclists slogan is the more people on bikes, the better it is for everybody, something along those lines. So
I agree.
What got you so involved in this? You're a para triathlete coach, a paracycling coach. What was it that made you go in this direction?
Kind of by accident, being in the right place at the right time. I mean, I started triathlon 12 years ago. I'd moved back to LA from New York. I applied for a grant with Ironman to bring women into the sport. My coach at the time, Ian Murray, who also is a cyclist, I said to him, if I get this grant, will you write the program? Because I didn't know anything about coaching. My undergraduate, though, was deaf education and speech pathology. So I've always sort of been teetering in that world and have volunteered in organizations in that world. I got the grant for the first year. Ian did it. The second year, he said, you're teaching it. And I said, I'm not a coach. And I decided at that point, I got my first certification. I was there for 6 months, and then there was the opportunity, the director of parasports for USA Triathlon, and I hit it off. And she said, I want you, and I want you to come and get certified. So I went to the U.S. Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs, and I spent 10 days there, and I got both my levels 1 and 2 in para triathlon coaching. And the rest, they say, is history. It just kind of steamrolled. I truly, truly love what I do. I am passionate, and getting people to feel like I can do this. I don't have to sit at home, because we do have, as you know, a lot of vets come back without a limb or something. And so we have a lot of programs. CAF has a whole program for vets.
It must be a high bar to entry for a lot of these people, not only the cost of a hand cycle or something, but getting out of their safe environment and, being, like you said, out on the road and sort of challenging themselves.
It is a high cost from the equipment aspect of it. You are correct, which is why we have CAF and Move United, because they offer those grants. They help to get the equipment. They help to bring people into a community, because so many vets, when they first get injured, they feel like, I don't want to live anymore. I can't do anything. I used to play tennis. I can't do this. So we try and help bring them out of that. And so that's one of the reasons I got involved too, is because even parents will say, oh my gosh, if you create the program, we'll come. And it's also bringing the communities together, because once we bring people in to volunteer and they get to know some of the athletes who just happen to be in a chair or happen to not have their vision, they just keep wanting to do more and more and more. I want to make the playing field a lot more even. Part of that is letting people know that we have these opportunities for you. You don't have to pay for it yourself. We can help find scholarships or grant money or introduce you to communities. They do become your community. And what I love also is you don't just get to know the one person. You get to know the family. You get to know the kids or the spouse or the partner.
How would people listening who either are challenged or have friends that are challenged, how would they reach out and find a program in their town? Just go to CAF?
So they can go to CAF or challengeathletesfoundation.org, Challenge Athletes Foundation. They can pull up Dare to Try, Dare and the number 2, Try. Also, it's called Move United. That is much more of a national organization in all aspects of every sport. And they can also reach out to me as well. I'm Coach Deb at elevatemultisport.com. It's all one word. So Coach Deb at elevatemultisport.com.
Well, it was a happy accident indeed that got you involved in this, because it really does seem like you're bringing together abled and disabled athletes, men and women, and even triathletes and cyclists.
I know.
Bringing us all together.
And kids. We're trying to bring kids in there,
Deb Carabet, thank you so much for all that you do for all athletes, but for coming on Bike Talk.
Oh, thank you for having me. This was great, Taylor. I appreciate
very fun.
it. Anytime.
I'm looking forward to talking to some of the athletes that she's been working with. She worked with a couple of veterans to kind of hear what a difference it makes to overcome a disability and get on a bike and ride around.
That sounds good. Good show.
Our work here is done. Were you waiting for me to thank people?
Yeah.
Long pause. We want to thank, a lot of people. We want to thank Kallie Krumpos, Kendra Ramsey, Deb Carabet,
Patrick Miner, and Kevin Grishkot.
And of course, we always want to thank our regulars, Julie Richard, Kevin Burton, Amy Ziering, Lindsay Sturman, Stacey Randecker, and Josh Hagland.
And you got a bike thought?
I do. In honor of Bike Month, I thought this is a great old quote that I've always liked. Work to eat to live to ride to work.
Ride to work. You could do it on Ride to Work Day during Ride to Work Week.
Yep.
And Bike Month. All right. Thanks, Taylor.
Ride safe.
Bike Talk is a project of CRSP and the Los Angeles Eco-Village Institute.
This episode of Bike Talk is sponsored by the law offices of Pocras and De Los Reyes, with offices in Los Angeles and Bakersfield and serving all of Southern California.
And that was Bike Talk. If you have a story, a tip, or a topic, head over to biketalk.org and send us a message. Talk again next week.
Get on your bike, sit on the seat, put your feet on the pedals, and ride it all around, ride it all around. Get on your bike, sit on the seat, put your feet on the pedals, and ride it all around, ride it all around. Oh, get that car out of my way. I wanna ride my bike today. It keeps me fit, gets me there. I won't go stinking up the air. Leave behind the daily grind. Let your mind unwind. Live its life, pretend to life. Better get yourself a bike. Get on your bike, sit on the seat, put your feet on the pedal, and ride it all around, ride it all around. Get on your bike, sit on the seat, put your feet on the pedal, and ride it all around, ride it all around. Get that car out of my way, I wanna ride my bike today. It keeps me fit, gets me there, I won't go stinking up the air. Leave behind the daily grind, let your mind unwind. Live its life, pretend to life, better get yourself a bike. Got yourself a bike. Oh, 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 got yourself a bike.